Welcome to the press conference of the President of the European Council and of the President of the European Commission following the 22nd EU-China Summit. Point out that we have issued a press release on behalf of the two presidents, and there will be a Q&A session, but first I give the floor to the President of the European Council.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased that we could speak by video conference to discuss important topics for both the EU and China today. In fact, our diplomatic relations are 45 years old this year and evolving. Our discussions today were open and substantive, and we discussed many topics we agree on, but of course we discussed also topics we disagree on. We focused on 4 important areas. The first one, COVID-19 and the economic consequences, the economic recovery. The second one is the EU-China relationship. The third one is Hong Kong and the important question for us of human rights. And the fourth topic is related to the international issues. Concernant le premier aspect, le Covid-19 et ses conséquences, nous avons eu l'occasion d'exprimer l'importance pour nous de tirer les conséquences en toute transparence de la réaction internationale sur ce sujet. Nous avons aussi eu l'occasion de rappeler à quel point nous sommes mobilisés s'agissant de la question des vaccins qui, pour nous, doivent être un bien commun, accessible pour tout le monde et également à un prix abordable. Et nous considérons qu'une relance ambitieuse sera extrêmement importante sur le plan économique. Nous avons eu l'occasion d'expliquer aussi le processus européen en lien avec le budget européen et le fonds de relance que nous souhaitons mettre en place pour soutenir l'activité économique. We had also the occasion to discuss the EU-China relationship, and we stressed the need to implement the commitments made at the 2019 EU-China summit. More particularly, we discussed very concrete topics. The first one is trade. We have a dynamic trading relationship with China. We trade on average over 1 billion euros a day. It's huge. And the EU is China's first trading partner. But progress is needed in many areas to rebalance this relationship, and we made clear that we need to resolve concrete problems such as market access, subsidies, regulatory issues, public procurement, forced technology transfers, level playing field and WTO reforms. Nous avons aussi eu l'occasion d'exprimer de part et d'autre le souhait de continuer à négocier de façon intense sur la question de l'accord relatif aux investissements. Nous avons aussi constaté les progrès réalisés s'agissant des accords sur les indications géographiques pour lesquels nous avons bon espoir de pouvoir clôturer dans un délai rapproché les discussions. Nous avons eu, bien sûr, l'occasion, c'est un thème essentiel pour nous, vous le savez, de mettre en évidence l'importance à nos yeux du changement climatique et de la mobilisation internationale qui est nécessaire sur le sujet pour faire en sorte que l'on puisse travailler à la stabilité parce que le changement climatique est une menace pour l'humanité, pour le monde, et parce que nous considérons qu'il y a aussi un lien avec la question économique et la question commerciale, alors qu'il faut aussi travailler pour éviter qu'il y ait des concurrences déloyales qui soient possibles sur le plan international en lien avec ces ambitions climatiques. Vous connaissez notre ambition pour 2050 et le travail que nous devons mener afin d'identifier des objectifs en lien avec 2030. Nous considérons aussi que nous devons agir sur ce terrain-là dans les enceintes internationales, dans les enceintes multilatérales, pour faire en sorte qu'il y ait une mobilisation plus générale sur le plan international en lien avec le changement climatique. On a aussi l'occasion de discuter de l'agenda digital et de l'importance dans ce cadre-là de garantir la confiance. Garantir la confiance signifie que l'on doit lutter contre les menaces pour la cybersécurité, que l'on doit lutter contre toutes les techniques de désinformation qui minent la confiance, qui est un élément et un facteur totalement indispensable. Enfin, the third point, Hong Kong and human rights. We expressed our grave concerns about the proposed national security law for Hong Kong. We called on China to follow the promises made to the people of Hong Kong and the international community regarding Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy and guaranteed freedoms. Je voudrais ajouter que nous soutenons naturellement le principe un pays, deux systèmes, que nous notons que 50% des investissements européens en Chine transitent par Hong Kong. Nous notons qu'il y a 1600 entreprises européennes qui sont actives à Hong Kong et nous considérons qu'on doit respecter la neutralité politique de ces entreprises. Nous n'acceptons pas les pressions qui seraient faites pour mettre en cause la neutralité politique de ces entreprises européennes qui sont ancrées à Hong Kong. Nous avons eu l'occasion aussi plus généralement d'évoquer la question des minorités et d'évoquer la question des droits de l'homme en mentionnant expressément des cas. Un citoyen suédois d'une part, deux citoyens canadiens d'autre part. Vous connaissez les cas en question pour lesquels nous considérons que les détentions semblent être arbitraires. Enfin, nous avons eu l'occasion d'évoquer des questions internationales. Aussi bien la question de l'Iran, pour laquelle nous avons échangé nos points de vue sur ce sujet, la question de l'Afghanistan, la question de la péninsule coréenne. Nous avons appelé à être mobilisés, engagés pour favoriser des solutions pacifiques dans un cadre multilatéral. On a aussi l'occasion de mettre en exergue l'importance de la sécurité du transport maritime. Vous savez que 90% du transport international transite par voie maritime et la question de la mer de Chine méridionale est une question naturellement importante d'un point de vue stratégique pour la sécurité du transport et donc du commerce et donc du développement économique. Vous l'avez compris, nous avons eu des vidéoconférences qui ont été l'occasion de mener des échanges intenses, approfondis sur l'ensemble des sujets qui sont des sujets d'ordre international et multilatéral, mais aussi dans le cadre de la relation bilatérale. Ce type de vidéoconférence est l'occasion de promouvoir les valeurs européennes auxquelles nous croyons, la démocratie, l'état de droit, le respect des droits humains, la protection et la défense des minorités. Nous avons mené ce dialogue sans tabou, sur un ton direct, franc. Nous avons aussi eu l'occasion d'envisager les points sur lesquels nous souhaitons pouvoir progresser en matière commerciale, en matière économique. C'est l'occasion de mettre en évidence de façon concrète, pas avec des mots, mais avec une action que l'on veut entreprendre, cette question de l'autonomie stratégique de l'Union européenne, qui est un enjeu extrêmement central à nos yeux. Et enfin, nous considérons que cette relation doit être fondée sur la transparence, sur la réciprocité. C'est le message qui a été donné. Et dans cet esprit-là, nous avons l'intention de poursuivre de manière régulière ce dialogue politique à haut niveau. Ça devrait être le cas après l'été, puisque nous aurions de nouveau, après l'été, l'occasion de poursuivre ce dialogue, de faire le point sur l'état d'avancement des différents sujets qui ont déjà été évoqués et de revenir sur des sujets, y compris sur des sujets difficiles. Et vous savez que ce sommet de Leipzig, qui était prévu au mois de septembre, n'est pas possible. Une annonce a été faite sur le sujet, mais nous gardons le souhait, dès que les conditions le permettront, de tenir un sommet qui rassemblerait les autorités chinoises avec l'ensemble des 27 chefs d'État et de gouvernement européen. Voilà les quelques éléments que je souhaitais partager avec vous cet après-midi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam President.
Thank you. Indeed, the relationship between the European Union and China is simultaneously one of the most strategically important and one of the most challenging that we have. Today's summit has been a much-needed opportunity to discuss and move forward on all aspects of this complex and vital partnership. Our discussions were both intense and they were indeed wide-ranging, from trade and investment to climate action and the digital field, from Hong Kong to human rights and, of course, the coronavirus response. And we are able to discuss all these issues with China. But I must say, mostly important was and is that we must make progress. For this, the summit was only a starting point. Progress implies cooperation on both sides, implies reciprocity, and implies trust. These have been central pillars of our discussions today. And Charles has already focused on many of the important issues that we discussed, including on Hong Kong and human rights. And I do not want to repeat what has been already said. But let me reiterate that for the European Union, human rights and fundamental freedoms are non-negotiable. We always raise our concerns, so was it today too, and insist on having our view on these topics. Of course, we discuss trade and investment. And indeed, the European Union is China's biggest trading partner, and China our second biggest. We will soon be in a position to sign our agreement on geographical indications. This guarantees a high level of protection for our respective producers, and that is good. And yet, we continue to have an unbalanced trade and investment relationship. We have not made the progress we aimed for in the last year's summit statement in addressing market access barriers. We need to follow up on these commitments urgently. And we also need to have more ambition on the Chinese side in order to conclude negotiations on an investment agreement. These two actions would address the asymmetry in our respective market access and improve the level playing field between us. In order to conclude the investment agreement, we would need, in particular, substantial commitments from China on the behavior of state-owned enterprises, transparency in subsidies, and transparency on the topic of forced technology transfers. And we have raised these issues at the same time with Premier Li and President Xi, that we expect that China will show the necessary level of ambition to conclude these negotiations by the end of this year. I think it is important that we have now a political, high-level approach on these topics. I've also made clear that China needs to engage seriously on a reform of the World Trade Organization, in particular, on future negotiations on industrial subsidies. This is the relevant framework where we have to work together on the topic. It's a difficult topic, but this is the framework which we have to establish to have common binding rules we agree on. And we must continue to work on tackling Chinese overcapacity, for example, in the steel and metal sectors and in high technology. Here, for us, it's important that China comes back to the international negotiation table, that we sit down there and find solution. We also pointed out the importance of digital transformation and its highly assertive approach to the security, the resilience and stability of digital networks, systems, and value chains. We have seen cyber attacks on hospitals and dedicated computing centers. Likewise, we've seen a rise on online disinformation, and we pointed out clearly that this cannot be tolerated. We've also discussed climate action, and climate change remains the global challenge of our generation. China has repeatedly projected itself as a leader on global climate issues, and China is indeed on our side on this. However, being a leader brings responsibility to follow up with actions. We urge China to commit to climate neutrality as soon as possible after 2050. And we count on China to live up to its commitments under the Paris Agreement and step them up and lead by example. We look forward to seeing decarbonization play a big role in China's upcoming next 5-year plan, as the European Green Deal plays a big role in our strategic agenda as well. And last but not least, the coronavirus pandemic. When the virus hit China, the European Union responded swiftly. We coordinated and co-financed the delivery of over 56 tons of emergency medical supplies. China then reciprocated when Europe faced the pandemic, and we agreed on the need to continue this mutual solidarity. We agreed also in supporting countries and populations that are more vulnerable than our own, for example, in the context of the global response initiatives. Voilà, to conclude, today has been a very intense, a very frank and a very open meeting. We would want and expect nothing less. This was good. It is not possible to shape the world of tomorrow without a strong EU-China relationship. However, it is time to accelerate on the very crucial areas of our relationship, to deliver on the important commitments from last summit and address our concerns on reciprocity and the level playing field. As European Union, we're committed to making swift and substantial progress. We count on the Chinese leadership to match our level of ambition.
Thank you, Madam President. We have a couple of questions. Could I please ask you to turn on your cameras and raise the blue hand, as you know by now? And the first question we're getting is from Lawrence Norman. Please, Lawrence, could you say to whom you want to speak as well?
Good afternoon. Thanks a lot. Whichever the President wishes to answer this. It's a question on the trade and economic side. You've made clear what you pressed the Chinese on and the issues that they have not delivered on. What was their response? Were there any fresh promises today to deliver on what they promised last year on the trade and investment side? And what did you say to them would be the consequence if these issues are not resolved by the end of the year, including the issues around the investment agreement? Thank you.
Madam President.
So on this trade issue, indeed, we were very intensive in all the meetings today on this issue. And indeed, our interlocutors responded that they explained their view on the topics, be it the level playing field or being subsidies or being market access. For us was important that it is completely okay to exchange different views and to have different standpoints. But we expect now to step up and to lift the negotiations that so far have been on a very low level to a higher political level, that we really see the dedication to have at the very end an investment agreement. So for us it's important that we step up the level of attention these negotiations get before the end of the summer, because then this would give us a real chance to have an investment agreement till the end of the year. If this is not possible, it would be a pity, but this also would be difficult then to develop our agenda 2025 together, because we have the intentions to work together. There are the words put on paper, but we also need the deeds, and we also need to see that there is really improvement on the topics where we have different opinions.
I would like to add that we need more political leadership in order to explain clearly why it's so essential for the European Union to take more into consideration this question of the level playing field, for example, or another concrete example, the subsidies. And, for example, we made clear that it was essential for us to make more transparency about this question, because a fair competition is clearly needed. And I hope that because of this discussion today, it will be possible in the next months to make more concrete progress. It will be difficult. We are not naive. We are aware about the huge difficulties, but it's essential for our businesses to be able to have a fair access to the Chinese market. If we open the open market, it's also important at the same time to have more reciprocity.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next question for Stuart Lau from the South China Morning Post.
Thank you. This is Stuart Lau from the Morning Post in Hong Kong. I have a couple of questions for President von der Leyen, if I may. My first question is a more general one. You just got off the phone with a leader that some would regard as the world's most powerful man, but others describe him as an autocrat or even a dictator. Does he strike you as somebody with whom the EU can build a strategic partnership in the future? And my second question is more focused on Hong Kong. Are you satisfied with the response you got from the Chinese leadership today? And if not, what actions is the EU prepared to take when the national security law is enforced? Thank you.
So we were very clear in our conversations that Beijing's imposition of a national security law on Hong Kong does not conform with the Hong Kong Basic Law, nor with China's international commitments. This was very clear. The national security law risks seriously undermining the one country, two systems principle and Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy we wish to see stay in place. And it is this autonomy that has allowed Hong Kong to flourish and to be so successful. So we also conveyed that China risks very negative consequences if it goes forward with imposing this law. The European Union is in touch with our G7 partners on this topic, and we've made our position very clear to the Chinese leadership today and urged them to reconsider. Of course, they have a different standpoint than us, but this is our very clear standpoint we conveyed to the Chinese leadership.
Mr. President.
It's our intention to continue to monitor the situation. We expressed clearly our opinion on that, and I would like to remember that the day after the announcement by the Chinese authorities of this security law, we reacted as European Union. Immediately we reacted, and we spoke loud and clear today, and we will follow the situation.
Thank you. We'll take a last question by Gavin Lee from the BBC News. Gavin? Can you hear us? Please unmute. We can't hear you.
Second. Is that better?
Yeah,
that's better.
Yeah, it works.
3 years ago, President Tusk, predecessor Michel, talked about 4 external threats to the EU and the aggression from Russia, radical Islam, and also China was the core group. 3 years on,
I'm sorry, but could you rephrase your question, because the connection is really bad.
Yes, I'll try and be brief. Can you give me a sense of what your assessment is of China as an external threat to the EU, given your comments by President Tusk 3 years ago, if that makes sense as the first question? And the second issue is on the comments from President von der Leyen. You said a moment ago that on the issue of Chinese disinformation and propaganda, we pointed out clearly, you said, that this cannot be tolerated. Can you explain what the conversation was and what the Chinese president said in reply?
We have a very clear approach. We think that it's essential to have a dialogue because we need a dialogue if we want to promote our values, if we want to defend our interests. It doesn't mean that we agree on everything. It's not the case. We expressed that on different points. We think that we need to work together to improve some concrete cooperation, but at the same time, we disagree on very important and essential topics. And we had the occasion to promote our values, to explain why we consider that it's so important to promote and to support the human rights, to protect the minorities, or to consider, for example, that the status in Hong Kong is very important and that we need to respect this high degree of autonomy in Hong Kong. We had this occasion, and it's our intention at the international level to continue to speak also with countries with which we don't agree about everything.
So, indeed, you mentioned Donald Tusk, and may I quote or cite the description that the Commission has on our EU-China relations. You know that we describe these relations as being that China is for the European Union a negotiating partner, an economic competitor, and a systemic rival. And you have to see all three together. And the negotiating partner, for example, you can see on that we are close to have the agreement now on the geographical indications. This would be a negotiation success in a certain field. The economic competitor, the first question in this press conference related to that too. So the fact that we are working hard on having a fair market access to these economic competitors, so fair conditions. For us is not important to have the market access to have the same outcome. But what we want is the same and fair opportunities. This is for us important to be here clear with our economic competitor. The same goes for the topic of the subsidies we've been discussing. For us is important that we negotiate rules for subsidies. There are subsidies out there, of course, globally, but that we negotiate modern rules in the WTO framework we can agree on, and everybody's playing by the same rules. So here, economic competitor and systemic rival. That means these are two very different systems, very different views on values. What the European Union is concerned, or China. And in this category, of course, goes the topic of cybersecurity. We know that we've seen attacks on cybersecurity, on the cyber attacks in the past, as I said, on computing systems, on hospitals, and we know the origin of the cyber attacks. The same goes for disinformation. You know that the European Union is very active on dismantling the disinformation. So by doing so, you go to the source and you have an idea where the disinformation comes from. So on our side, we put against them the facts and the figures that are necessary to know. And these three descriptions, negotiation partner, economic competitor, and systemic rival, shows the relationship that is not an easy one, but one we're working on.
Thank you, Madam and Mr. President. This concludes our press conference. Please check our joint press release on our both websites. Thank you.